The phone rang at 2 in the morning, and Owen Barrett knew it was a wrong number the second he heard her voice. A stranger, panicked and breathless, begging for help with a baby who wouldn't stop crying. He should have said sorry, wrong person, and hung up. Should have rolled over and gone back to sleep in his cramped apartment, where his 7-year-old daughter slept peacefully down the hall. But something in that woman's desperation, in the sound of that infant's helpless wail, made him ask for the address instead. 15 minutes later, he stood in the marble lobby of the Meridian Tower, work boots tracking rain across floors that cost more than his yearly income, wondering what the hell he was doing. The woman who opened the penthouse door on the 28th floor looked nothing like someone who should need his help. Perfectly put together even at this ungodly hour, standing in a space that screamed wealth and power. But her hands trembled as she held the crying baby, and her eyes held the same exhaustion Owen saw in his own mirror every morning. She didn't ask his name. He didn't ask hers. She just stepped aside and whispered 2 words that would change everything. "Please stay." Owen stepped inside, and the door clicked shut behind him with a sound that felt permanent. The penthouse stretched out before him like something from a magazine he'd never read, all glass walls and white furniture that looked too expensive to sit on. The baby in her arms couldn't have been more than 3 months old, face red and scrunched with misery. The woman holding him looked like she might shatter if someone spoke too loud. Her blonde hair fell loose around her shoulders, and her silk pajamas probably cost more than Owen's truck payment. But none of that mattered when he saw the helpless panic in her eyes. He'd seen that look before, in his own face, 3 years ago, when the hospital called to say Melissa was gone and he had a newborn daughter waiting at home. The memory hit him hard enough to make his chest tight, but he pushed it down the way he always did. Owen crossed the space between them and held out his hands. "May I?" The woman hesitated for just a second, her green eyes searching his face, then passed the baby over with careful desperation. The infant settled against Owen's chest with a hiccup, and Owen felt muscle memory take over. Support the head. Keep the body close. Rock with your whole body, not just your arms. The baby's cries started to soften into exhausted whimpers. Owen glanced up at the woman, who stood frozen in the middle of her expensive living room. "When did he last eat?" She blinked, like she had to drag herself back from somewhere far away. 2 hours ago. Maybe 3. I lost track." Owen nodded toward the kitchen area, all marble countertops and gleaming appliances. "Show me where you keep his formula." She led him to a cabinet that held everything a baby might need, all of it brand new and barely touched. The formula can was still full, the bottles still had packaging labels, and the bottle warmer looked unused. Owen set the baby in her arms again and moved around her kitchen like he belonged there. He found what he needed by instinct, measuring powder and water with automatic precision that came from doing it 1,000 times before with Riley. The woman watched him work. "You've done this before," she said, and it wasn't a question. Owen tested the formula temperature on his wrist before turning back. "I have a daughter. She's 7 now." He took the baby back, settling into the rhythm of feeding without thinking. The infant latched onto the bottle immediately, desperate and hungry, and the woman sank onto her white couch like her strings had been cut. They sat in silence while the baby ate, Owen in an armchair that probably cost more than his monthly rent. The woman curled into the corner of her couch. The city sprawled below them through those massive windows, Portland sleeping under its blanket of rain. Owen had lived in this city his whole life, and never once seen it from this height, from this angle of wealth and distance. But babies cried the same everywhere, and exhaustion looked the same on every face, no matter how expensive the skincare routine. When the bottle was empty, Owen burped the baby with practiced gentleness. The infant's head grew heavy against his shoulder, body relaxing into sleep with absolute trust. Owen stood slowly, rocking side to side in that small, unconscious movement every parent learned. "Where does he sleep?" She led him down a hallway to a nursery painted soft grey with white furniture that looked assembled yesterday. A crib stood against one wall, still wrapped in plastic on the mattress. Owen felt something sink in his stomach. This woman didn't just need help with a crying baby. She didn't know how to be a mother at all. He unwrapped the plastic with one hand while holding the sleeping baby with the other, then laid the infant down with gentle care. The woman stood in the doorway, watching with an expression that looked like grief and relief mixed together. When Owen passed her, she caught his arm with surprising strength. "Don't go," she whispered, raw and desperate. "I know this is insane. I know you don't know me, and I don't know you, but I can't do this alone. Not tonight. Please." Owen should have said no, but he looked at her face, saw the kind of desperation that came from being in over your head with no lifeline, and thought about those first weeks after Melissa died. So instead of leaving, Owen walked back to the living room and settled into that expensive armchair. "Until sunrise," he said quietly. "Then I have to get home to my daughter." The woman's shoulders sagged with relief so profound it looked painful. "Thank you," she whispered. They didn't talk after that. Owen sat in that chair while Portland's rain painted patterns on the windows. The woman fell asleep on her couch, curled up small, despite all the space she had. And Owen stayed awake, listening for the sound of a baby crying, the way he'd trained himself to do years ago. When the sun started to rise, Owen stood carefully and moved toward the door. The woman stirred, lifting her head. "Wait," she said, her voice thick with sleep. She stood, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "I'm Vivian, but you can call me Viv." Owen paused with his hand on the door. "Owen," he said. "Owen Barrett." Viv nodded slowly, like she was committing it to memory. "Thank you, Owen Barrett, for showing up when you didn't have to." Owen wanted to say something profound, but all he could manage was, "The baby. What's his name?" For a moment, pain flashed across Viv's face. "Theo," she said softly. "His name is Theodore." Owen nodded and turned to go, but Viv's voice stopped him one more time. "Owen, if I needed help again, would you come?" He should have said no. Instead, Owen found himself saying, "Yeah, I would." 3 days later, at 11 at night, his phone rang with the same number. Owen was helping Riley with homework when Viv's name lit up his screen. Riley looked up at him with curious brown eyes. "Who is it, Daddy?" Owen hesitated, then answered. Viv's voice came through tight with panic. "Owen, it's me. Theo's fever is back and it's worse." Owen thought about the early morning job he had scheduled, about all the reasons to say no. Then he thought about a baby's helpless cry. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said. Riley was watching him when he hung up. "Daddy has to go help someone, sweetheart. Mrs. Chen next door will stay with you, okay?" Riley nodded solemnly. "Is it the lady from before?" Owen stopped, jacket halfway on. He'd never told Riley about that night. "How did you know?" Riley shrugged. "You smell different when you come back. Like fancy soap." Owen knelt in front of his daughter. "Yes, it's the same lady. She has a baby who needs help." Riley studied his face seriously. "Are you helping her like you helped Mummy?" The question hit Owen hard. "I'm trying," he said honestly. Riley hugged him tight. "Then you should go. But come back, okay?" Owen held his daughter close. "Always, baby. I'll always come back." This time, when Owen arrived at the Meridian Tower, the doorman nodded like he was expected. Viv opened the door before he could knock. Theo hot and fussy in her arms. She looked more put together this time, but her eyes held till the same exhaustion. His temperature is 101. I don't know if that's bad or normal. Owen stepped inside, already reaching for the baby. Theo came to him with a whimper, his small body radiating heat. Owen had brought children's fever reducer from his own medicine cabinet. Has he been eating? Viv nodded. Every 3 hours. I set timers. Owen caught the defensive edge in her voice. That's good, he said gently. You're doing better than you think. He gave Theo the medicine with careful expertise, then settled into the same armchair to rock the feverish baby. How did you know? Viv asked after a long silence. Know what? Owen adjusted Theo against his chest. How to do all this. Were you always good with babies? Owen thought about those first terrifying weeks with Riley. No, he said honestly. I was terrible at first. My wife, Melissa, she had to teach me everything. He paused, remembering. She was patient. I was lucky. Viv sat down across from him. Was, she said softly, catching the past tense. Owen nodded. She died 3 years ago. Car accident. Left me with a 4-month-old daughter and no idea what I was doing. The silence felt heavy with shared understanding. Finally, Viv spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Theo's father was my brother, Christopher. He died 6 months ago in a car crash. Owen looked up sharply, and Viv met his eyes with desperate courage. Christopher's wife left 2 weeks after the funeral. Didn't want a baby, just wanted the family money. My family wanted to put him in foster care. Can you imagine? We have more money than we could spend in 10 lifetimes, and they wanted to let him disappear into the system. Owen felt anger kindle in his chest. So you took him? Viv nodded, her eyes bright. I'm his aunt. I'm all he has left of Christopher. How could I let him go? Owen understood that kind of love, the kind that chose responsibility over ease. You're doing the right thing, he said firmly. Viv laughed, but it was broken. Am I? I'm a CEO of a tech company. I work 70 hours a week. I don't know anything about babies. I called a random stranger at 2 a.m. because I was desperate. Owen shifted Theo in his arms. You called someone who could help. That takes courage, not weakness. They sat in silence after that, watching Theo's breathing even out as sleep took hold. Around 3 a.m, Owen laid the baby in his crib and found Viv making coffee. She handed him a cup, and they stood at her windows watching Portland sleep. Why did you come back? Viv asked quietly. Owen thought about Riley's question, about helping people who needed it. Because I remember what it's like. Being in over your head with no one to call. Someone should have helped me back then. I'm just paying it forward. The weeks that followed fell into a pattern Owen never planned but couldn't break. Viv would call, usually late at night, always apologetic but desperate. Theo wouldn't sleep. Theo wouldn't eat. And Owen would go, leaving Riley with Mrs. Chen, driving across Portland to the tower where the doorman now waved him through. He taught Viv how to read Theo's cues, how to stay calm when everything felt like chaos. And slowly, they started talking about things beyond babies. Viv told him about growing up in a family where image mattered more than happiness. Owen told her about learning his trade from his father, about choosing honest work over college loans. They were from different worlds, but at 3 a.m, with a sleeping baby between them and the city spread out below, those differences felt smaller. 2 weeks before Christmas, Owen arrived to find another woman in the penthouse. She was older, with silver hair and a navy suit that screamed lawyer. She learned to look at Owen like he was a stain. Who is this, Vivian? the woman asked sharply. Viv stood near the kitchen, Theo on her hip, shoulders tense. "This is Owen, a friend." The woman's eyebrows rose. "A friend? You don't have friends, Vivian. You have colleagues and people who want something from you." Owen felt anger flash hot, but before he could speak, Viv stepped forward. "Helen, this is none of your business." Helen turned her cool gaze on Viv. "Everything about you is my business. I'm your family's attorney. And right now, the board is asking questions about your ability to lead while raising a child." The words hung like a threat. Viv's face went carefully blank. "Thank you for your concern, Helen. You can see yourself out." When Helen left, Viv sank onto her couch, still holding Theo. "I'm sorry you had to see that." Owen sat beside her. "What did she mean about the board?" Viv laughed bitterly. "My company's board thinks I'm spread too thin. A single CEO with a baby. They're concerned about my focus, my dedication. They want me to give him up, hire a nanny, send him away, anything but actually raise him myself." She looked down at Theo. "But I want to keep him. I want Theo to know he's loved, not just another obligation to be managed." Her voice cracked. "I don't know if I can do it alone." Owen reached out and took her hand. "You're not alone," he said firmly. "Not anymore." Christmas came with Portland wrapped in freezing rain. Owen spent the day with Riley, baking cookies and watching movies and pretending not to think about Viv and Theo alone. Riley noticed anyway. "You should call her, Daddy," she said, while they built a gingerbread house. "The lady with the baby. I bet they're lonely today." So Owen called, stepping onto their tiny balcony. Viv answered on the second ring, carefully casual, but Owen heard the loneliness underneath. "Merry Christmas," he said. They talked for 20 minutes about nothing important, and when Owen came back inside, Riley was smiling like she'd solved a puzzle. The day after Christmas, Viv's voice came through tight with panic. "Owen, I need to see you. Can you come over?" Something in her tone made his stomach drop. When he arrived, Viv opened the door with swollen eyes and a newspaper. She passed it to him without a word. The Portland Tribune's business section featured a photo of Owen leaving the Meridian Tower at 3 a.m. The headline read, "Ashford Heiress's mysterious night visitor. Who is he?" The article speculated about Owen's relationship with Vivian Ashford, CEO of Ashford Technologies. Owen felt his hands shake. "Viv, I'm so sorry." She cut him off. "It's not your fault, it's mine. I should have been more careful." Owen read through the article again. "What does this mean?" Viv wrapped her arms around herself. "It means the board is going to have a field day. It means they're going to use this as proof that I'm out of control, unable to separate my personal life from professional responsibilities. It means I've dragged you into something you never asked for." Owen wanted to argue, but he thought about Riley, about kids at school making assumptions about a situation they didn't understand. The next morning, Riley came home from school with red eyes. "Some kids said you're dating a rich lady," Riley whispered, climbing into his lap. "They said you're a gold digger. What's a gold digger, Daddy?" Owen held his daughter tight, fury and helplessness warring in his chest. "It means someone who only cares about money. But that's not true, baby." Riley pulled back to look at his face. "Then why are people being mean?" Owen didn't have an answer. That night, after she was asleep, he sat at their kitchen table and made a decision he didn't want to make. When his phone rang at 11, he almost didn't answer. Viv's voice came through, worried. "Owen, can you come over? Theo's fever again." Owen cut her off gently. "Viv, I can't. Riley's sick. I need to stay with her tonight." The lie tasted bitter, but he couldn't tell her the truth. Couldn't say his daughter had cried herself to sleep because of articles and rumors. The silence stretched long. Then Viv's voice came back, quieter but steadier. Of course. Take care of Riley. She needs you. Owen heard something break in her voice. Will you be okay? Another pause. I'll figure it out. I always do. They said goodbye, and Owen sat in his dark kitchen, wondering how something that felt so right had gone so wrong so quickly. The next day, an unfamiliar number called. Helen's cold voice greeted him. Mr. Barrett, we need to talk. They met at a coffee shop downtown. Helen didn't waste time with pleasantries. You need to leave Vivian alone, she said flatly. Owen's hands tightened around his coffee cup. I'm just helping her with Theo. Helen's smile was sharp. Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're giving the board ammunition. They're saying she's so incompetent she needs a random blue-collar worker to change diapers at 2 a.m. The words hit like physical blows. She's learning, Owen said defensively. Helen leaned forward. Then let her learn without you. The board is meeting next week. They're voting on whether to remove her as CEO. Your presence is making that decision easier. Owen felt cold spread through his chest. You're saying I'm the problem? Helen nodded. I'm saying your good intentions are destroying her career. Owen thought about Viv, about late-night conversations and shared exhaustion. But he also thought about Riley, about his daughter's tear-stained face. What do you want me to do? Helen slid an envelope across the table. $100,000. Walk away. Never contact her again. Owen looked at the envelope like it might bite him. You're trying to pay me off? Helen shrugged. I'm trying to protect my client. Owen stood, the chair scraping loud. I don't want your money, but I'll stay away. Not for you, for Riley, and for Viv, because she deserves better than this circus. That night, Owen stood outside the Meridian Tower for 20 minutes, phone in his hand. When he finally called, Viv answered immediately. Owen, where are you? He could hear the hope in her voice. I'm downstairs, but I'm not coming up. We need to talk. The silence told him she understood. Come up, she said quietly. We should do this face to face. Owen rode the elevator one last time, walked into the penthouse and faced the woman who'd become something he didn't have words for. Viv stood by her windows, Theo asleep in a carrier on her chest, and didn't turn when Owen came in. Helen came to see you, she said, not a question. Owen nodded. She told me about the board meeting, about what my being here is costing you. Viv finally turned. She had no right. Owen stepped closer. She didn't have to ask. I already knew. Riley's being bullied at school, kids saying things she doesn't understand because their parents are gossiping about us. She cried herself to sleep last night. Pain crossed Viv's face. Owen, I'm so sorry. He held up a hand. I know. Neither of us wanted this, but it's happening anyway. Owen looked at Theo, sleeping peacefully. I came here because I couldn't save my wife. When Melissa called that night asking for a ride, I made her wait. 20 minutes, I said, and in those 20 minutes she got in a taxi that crashed, and she died, and I spent 3 years wondering if I could have stopped it. Owen's voice cracked. I thought maybe if I could help you, it would make up for not saving her. But you don't need saving, Viv. You never did. Viv shook her head, tears spilling over. That's not true. I did need help. Owen cut her off gently. You need to do this on your own. To prove to yourself and your board that you can be a CEO and Theo's mother without needing me at 2 a.m. And I need to put Riley first. She has to come before anything else. Even this. The silence between them felt like grief. Finally Viv spoke, barely above a whisper. "What if I don't want you to go?" Owen felt something crack in his chest. "I don't want to go either. But wanting something isn't always enough." He took one last look at her, at Theo. "For what it's worth, I think you're the strongest person I've ever met. You took in your brother's son when your family abandoned him. You're learning to be a mother while running a billion-dollar company. You don't need me, Viv. You just needed to believe in yourself." Viv crossed the space between them, standing close. "And what if believing in myself isn't enough? What if I need you too?" Owen wanted to say yes, wanted to promise he'd be there whenever she called. Instead, he reached out and touched Theo's sleeping head with infinite gentleness. "Take care of him, and take care of yourself." Then he walked to the door, and when Viv called his name, he didn't stop. The next week passed in a fog. Owen went to work, came home to Riley, and tried not to think about Viv facing her board meeting alone. On Tuesday afternoon, Riley came home with a concerned look. "Daddy, are you sad about the lady?" Owen sat on their couch, pulling Riley close. "A little bit, baby, but I'll be okay." Riley was quiet, then said in her serious voice, "You know what Mommy used to say? She said being sad means you loved something. So it's okay to be sad, Daddy." The simple wisdom made Owen's chest ache. He held his daughter tight and thought about how love was complicated and sometimes required letting go. 2 weeks later, Owen received an envelope from a law firm. Inside was a check for $50,000 and a handwritten note. It said, "For your time, for your kindness, for teaching me I don't have to do everything alone." Theo said his first word yesterday, "Ball. I thought you'd want to know. Thank you for everything. V." Owen sat at his kitchen table, reading the note over and over. He didn't cash the check, just put it in the drawer with Melissa's things, next to photos and memories of a life that was over but not forgotten. Spring came to Portland with rain and unexpected sunshine. Owen's work stayed steady, Riley's bullying faded, and life settled into a rhythm that felt almost normal. One Saturday, Riley stopped in front of a magazine stand, pointing at a cover. "Daddy, that's her!" There on a business magazine was Viv, professional and polished, holding Theo, who'd grown so much. The headline read, "Vivian Ashford, the CEO who chose family over fortune." Owen bought the magazine and read it that night. It talked about how Viv had reduced her working hours to focus on Theo, how she'd restructured her priorities. The article quoted her, "My nephew lost his father. He won't lose me to a boardroom." Owen smiled despite the ache in his chest. She'd figured it out. She'd found the balance without him. The next morning, Riley came into the kitchen with art supplies. "Can we make a card? For the lady and the baby. To say we hope they're happy." Owen's throat tightened, but he nodded. Riley drew sunshine and flowers and 2 people holding hands. She wrote in careful letters, "Hope you're happy. From Riley." Owen added, "Thank you for reminding me it's okay to let people in. Wishing you and Theo the best. Owen and Riley." They mailed it without a return address, without expectations. Just a small gesture of connection. Summer came and went. Riley turned 8. Owen's business grew steady. And then, on a Tuesday afternoon in early September, his phone rang with a number he'd deleted but still recognized. Owen stared at the screen for 3 rings before answering. "Hello?" Viv's voice came through, nervous but warm. "Hi, Owen. It's me." His heart did something complicated. "Hi." They sat in silence, neither knowing what to say. Finally, Viv spoke. "I'm calling because Theo's turning 1 next month, October 15th. I'm throwing a small party. Just family and people who matter. Riley's invited too, if she wants to come." Owen closed his eyes, torn between yes and no. Viv, I don't think that's a good idea. She rushed on. No pressure. I just wanted you to know. Both of you. Owen heard something vulnerable in her voice. Why? Why now, after 8 months? Viv took a breath. Because Theo points at a card you sent and says something that sounds like your name. Because I tell him stories about the man who taught me to be a mother. Because I miss you, Owen, and I think maybe we gave up too easily. Owen thought about Riley, about complications and impossibilities, but he also thought about Viv's voice at 2 a.m, desperate and real. Let me talk to Riley. I'll call you back. When he explained to Riley that evening, her eyes lit up. Can we go, Daddy? I want to see if they're happy now. Owen knelt to her level. Are you sure, baby? Kids at school might talk again. Riley considered seriously, then shook her head. I don't care what they say. I know the truth. You helped them because it was right. That's what Mommy would have wanted. The wisdom of children could break your heart. Owen called Viv back. We'll come, but just as friends. I can't promise more than that. He heard Viv smile. I'm not asking for more. Not yet. But maybe someday. Owen thought about that word, someday. Yeah, maybe someday. The party was Saturday afternoon, and Owen's hands shook as he rang the penthouse doorbell. Viv answered, and Owen's breath caught. She looked different, softer, in jeans and a sweater instead of silk or suits. Her hair was in a casual ponytail, and she had frosting on her cheek. You came, she said, smiling bright and genuine. Behind her, the penthouse had transformed. Colourful toys scattered across the floor, photos covered the walls, pictures of Theo at various ages. The space looked lived in, loved in, real. Riley gasped. Wow, it's so big! Theo appeared, toddling on unsteady legs, and Owen barely recognized the tiny infant he'd held. The baby had become a little boy with bright, curious eyes. Theo stopped when he saw Owen, studied him seriously, then broke into a huge smile. Owen! He shouted, stumbling forward with arms outstretched. Owen caught him automatically, lifting him up, and felt something settle in his chest. Hey there, buddy. Look how big you got. Theo giggled and patted Owen's face with sticky hands. Riley tugged Owen's sleeve. Daddy, can I play with him? Viv smiled at Riley. Of course. I'll show you the toys. The afternoon passed with surprising ease. Theo's birthday cake was chocolate, and he smashed into it with joyful abandon, getting frosting everywhere, including in Owen's hair. Riley laughed until she couldn't breathe, and Viv took pictures, capturing moments that felt important. As the party wound down, Owen found himself on the balcony with Viv, while Riley and Theo played inside. You hired a nanny, Owen observed, watching Mrs. Chen move with comfortable confidence. Viv nodded. Mrs. Chen's been amazing, but I still do night feedings myself. Morning routines, bedtime stories. Owen heard the pride in her voice. You fought for him. At the board meeting. Viv's smile was complicated. I won, but it cost me. I'm not CEO anymore. I'm Chief Strategy Officer. Less day-to-day control, more big-picture thinking. It gives me time for Theo. Owen looked at her profile. Do you regret it? She turned to meet his eyes. Not for a second. Turns out my brother's son matters more than a title. They stood in comfortable silence. I'm sorry, Owen said finally, for leaving the way I did. Viv shook her head. You were protecting Riley. I understand. But Owen, I need you to know something. What we had wasn't just about Theo. It was about you. About the way you made me feel like I could be imperfect and still be enough. Owen's heart hammered. Viv. She held up a hand. I'm not asking for anything. I know you're not ready. I know I'm not ready. But someday, when Theo's older and Riley's more settled, and we've both figured out who we are without each other, maybe we could try again. Really try. Owen thought about second chances and new beginnings, and opening his heart after 3 years of keeping it locked tight. I'd like that, he said quietly. Someday. Viv smiled, real and warm and patient. Someday sounds perfect. When Owen and Riley left that evening, with Theo waving goodbye and promises to stay in touch, Riley squeezed his hand tight. She's not sad anymore, Daddy. Owen looked back at the Meridian Tower, at the light glowing from the windows. No, baby, she's not. Riley skipped ahead. And you're not sad either. Owen thought about the ache in his chest that had shifted from grief to something almost like hope. Not anymore, sweetheart. Not anymore. Weeks passed with occasional text messages, nothing heavy, just small updates. Viv sent pictures of Theo's favorite book. Owen sent photos of Riley's school play. They were learning to be friends again, slowly and carefully. One Tuesday evening, Owen was fixing a light fixture when his phone buzzed. The text from Viv was simple. Theo asked for you today. Said your name clear as day. Thought you should know. Owen smiled, typed back, Tell him I said hi. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, he's not the only one who misses you. Owen stared at those words, feeling something warm unfurl in his chest. He thought about Melissa, about how she'd told him healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant making room for new joy, alongside old grief. He thought about Riley's wisdom, about being sad meaning you'd loved something. And he thought about Viv, about second chances and someday. Owen typed carefully. I miss you too, both of you. Maybe we could get coffee sometime? Somewhere that's not a penthouse at 2 in the morning? The response came quickly. I'd love that. And just like that, someday started to feel less like a distant dream and more like a door slowly opening. Owen didn't know what the future held, didn't know if he and Viv would figure out how to bridge their different worlds. But standing in his small apartment with Riley singing in her room and Viv's message glowing on his phone, Owen felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. He felt ready to let go of guilt, ready to believe he deserved happiness, ready to trust that sometimes wrong numbers led to exactly the right places. The story didn't end with dramatic reunion or promises of forever. It ended with a simple coffee date scheduled for next Tuesday, with Riley's excited chatter about seeing Theo again, with the ordinary miracle of moving forward instead of standing still. Owen looked at Melissa's photo on his dresser and whispered, I'm doing it, Mel. I'm letting myself be happy again. And if the rain falling on Portland's streets sounded almost like approval, Owen chose to believe it was. Because some things were worth believing in. Second chances, new beginnings, and the possibility that a wrong call at 2 in the morning could lead to exactly where you needed to be.